Hey everybody, welcome to Profiling Evil by Mike King. I wanted to take a minute and talk a little about child safety and focus on the Tristyn Bailey story. As the prosecutor said, this is a battle worth fighting. You know, we've all been impacted in the last month by the senseless and vicious murder of 13-year-old Tristyn Bailey from Jacksonville, Florida's suburbs. Now, this beautiful young woman was stabbed by a 14-year-old schoolmate who has now been charged by prosecutors for her murder. The killer actually bragged to his friends before the assault that he planned on killing someone with his knife. He even shared that he was going to do it in a wooded area. Now, his peers shrugged it off as just another one of their strange friends' ramblings. It's clear that people around the world are shocked by the crime, and millions of people are watching this tragedy unfold in the news and on social media. I want to remind you, though, that this murder and youth murder in general is not just a problem faced by the United States. You already know that. The World Health Organization released a report last June where they stated that more than 200,000 children between the ages of 10 and 29 are murdered each year globally. Now that equates to 42% of every murder that occurs. Now the Tristan Bailey case caught our attention because of the horrific circumstances surrounding her death. She suffered massive trauma in what would be classified by me as a blitz-style attack. Information slowly coming out, and there are many unanswered questions, but I want to focus for a moment on who Tristyn Bailey is. She's described by her friends and family as a successful, bright, and outgoing teenager who possessed the dogged determination to be the very best student athlete she could be. She was co-captain of her award-winning cheerleading team. In the memorial service that was held at Celebration Church in Jacksonville, her friends and family describe her as welcoming and a friend to everyone. One of her friend's mothers said that she was a shining light. Another commented that she was not only a cheerleader on the stage, but she was a cheerleader in her everyday life and to everyone around her. She loved the color aqua, and she liked Gucci belts and drinks from Starbucks. She lived by her cheerleading squad's motto, "My squad, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us because we're a family." Well, everyone agrees she was kind, funny, and loving, but most importantly, they all said that she was respectful. As we think about her personality, it would seem to me that Tristyn is a low-risk person. She comes from a very close-knit family with a stay-at-home mom who has remained engaged in the child and all of her children's lives. They live in an upper-class neighborhood, and they appear to have many, many opportunities. Her closest associates were her cheerleading squad members and, frankly, their parents, coaches, and teachers. Tristyn's family appears to be very close and loving, and they're active in their faith, and they're friendly. These are just good people. Now, at the risk of unfair speculation, let's wait for more information to come out about her lifestyle and disregard some of the ghost stories we're hearing until it comes out publicly by a reliable source. But here's what we know about the crime right now. On the late evening of Saturday, May 8th, and into the early morning hours of May 9th, which sadly is Mother's Day, Tristyn met with a friend, a 14-year-old boy named Aiden Fucci. They were possibly met by other friends in the area, and they all gathered at the Durbin Crossing North Amenity Center. It's only a short 5-minute walk from her home. Now, it's unknown if she walked to the meeting or was at the center previously for some reason, but the sheriff's office reports that the family last saw her sometime around midnight. What we do know is that she and Fucci were captured on CCTV at 1:15 in the morning, just outside the amenity center. Tristyn was wearing a white cheerleading skirt and a dark colored shirt. Now, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what information's uncovered as the forensic examination of hers and Fucci's phone is conducted. Now, the pair leave at about 1:15. They were seen around 1:30 a.m., just a little further north from the center. And then this information and a sighting at 1:45 a.m. support a narrative that Bailey and Fucci walked from the center to the area up east of the cul-de-sac on Saddlestone Drive. Now, what happens over the next hour and 45 minutes, we can theorize, but what we know is that at 3:27, only one person is seen walking back westbound on Saddlestone Drive, holding a pair of shoes. By 10 a.m. that morning, again, this is Mother's Day, the Bailey family notified the St. John Sheriff's Office that Tristyn was missing. Now, it's unknown if they called immediately or if they searched around for a while, but by 5 p.m., a Florida missing child alert was issued. Now, these kinds of alerts are issued when a child is missing and believed to be in a life-threatening situation. But they're a little different from an Amber Alert because they don't feel like the child has been abducted. Sadly, an hour later, at 6 p.m., a neighbor discovered a female body in a wooded area just east of that same cul-de-sac on East Saddlestone Drive. It was confirmed shortly after that it was, in fact, Tristyn Bailey. Well, on Monday morning, May 10th, at 11:40, Sheriff Robert Hardwick of the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office announced that they had placed into custody 14-year-old schoolmate Aiden Fucci. He'd been charged with second-degree murder in the juvenile court, and almost immediately, social media blew up, showing Fucci's selfies, his photograph that he took of himself on Snapchat. He was in the back of a sheriff's deputy's patrol car, and he commented on the photo that he took that he was wondering if anyone knew where Tristyn was. Well, one day later, on Tuesday, May 11th, at about 11:40 in the morning, Aiden Fucci appeared in Volusia County Regional Detention Center, where he stoically faced Judge Michael Orfinger as the murder charges were levied against him.
Sometimes known as a first appearance. The purpose of your detention hearing is to determine whether there is probable cause for me to believe that an act of delinquency occurred and that you are the person who committed it. If I find that there is probable cause, we will then discuss the terms which the law allows you to be either released or detained. There's some things that you need to be aware of. First off, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you do say in this proceeding can be used against you. This proceeding is being recorded. Secondly, you have the right to be represented by an attorney. And if you or your family can't afford an attorney, I will appoint one to represent you. Now, let me just ask your parents briefly, do you have private counsel here today to represent him?
Yes, his attorney should be there, Andy. Anwar Snober.
What's his name?
Anwar Snober. Andy Snober.
His parents were watching via video conferencing. I just want to pause for a minute and just remark, can you imagine the heartache that the Fucci parents are feeling right now at this time as well? Now, there's some speculation and, frankly, some fact around Fucci's father, but I'm going to just leave that alone for a bit. Our attention must remain on the victim in this case, Tristyn Bailey and her family. We cannot lose sight, though, that there are many different victims in these kinds of senseless acts.
Is murder in the second degree, although it is a first degree felony. I have reviewed the arrest report Mr. Snober, do you have any comments on probable cause?
No, sir.
Okay. I do find that there is probable cause to believe that the offense occurred. And at this time, I'm going to order that Mr. Fucci be detained by the Department of Juvenile Justice in secure detention for 21 days or until further order of the court.
Well, as the facts of the case begin unfolding, we learned that Tristyn suffered more than 114 wounds. Some of you have verbalized that you hope that she didn't suffer. I agree. Who wouldn't hope that? But the difficult reality of this is that the evidence supports that she fought for her life, evident by the 49 wounds that were on her hands and her arms. This assault wasn't over quickly, folks. It took time. And while it may have been frenzied, it didn't end quickly. I've actually had a number of questions from you, and there's frankly a lot of speculation about frenzied knife assaults. So I thought I would just talk about this for a moment longer. As I reviewed the publicly available information on this case, I couldn't help but think back on a case that I worked when I was with the Attorney General's office. It was the murder of an inmate at the Utah State Prison that was captured on closed-circuit television. The victim was stabbed 67 times by another inmate named Troy Kell. Now, that was about half as many. It leaves me with this distinct impression of what Kristen would have had to have bore. And frankly, I'm never going to forget the image of watching that video footage of that murder unfolding. It will never leave my mind. Tristyn's death was a physically demanding murder, and the killer may have had to pause, perhaps multiple times during the crime, just to catch his breath, perhaps even rest for a moment. Now think about this as you listen to the state attorney describe why he believes it was a premeditated crime. Let's watch.
To say that it was horrific could arguably be made as an understatement. The medical examiner completed an autopsy on our victim and identified confidently that there were 114 stab wounds. 114. At least 49 of those stab wounds were to the hands, arms, and the head, and were defensive in nature. The bottom line is that premeditation could be inferred, certainly, from just the sheer number of stab wounds that Tristan Bailey had to suffer.
With Fucci facing murder charges in the juvenile court, his family retained Jacksonville attorney Anwar Snober to represent him. Within a few days, though, the Fucci family petitioned the court to find them indigent and release Snober from representing Fucci. The state appointed a public defender named Liana Dolores Orta to handle the case going forward. Well, the community held vigils and memorials on behalf of Tristyn Bailey and her family. In addition, they organized a petition through a group called Change.org in hopes that the district attorney would attempt to try Fucci as an adult. The petition hopes to get about 1 million votes, and the 723,000 plus names that are already on the register suggest they're well on their way. But the prosecutor made it very clear that the decision to charge Fucci as an adult had nothing or will have nothing to do with the petition. Regardless, the defense had to go to work knowing that the state would likely push for adult charges. It happened. On Friday, May 28th, District Attorney R.J. Lariza chose to move the case to the adult court. He stated, quote, "It was clear to us, after we looked at what happened, that it was not only appropriate to charge the defendant as an adult, but it was really the only choice we could make," close quote.
Today is May 28, 2021. I'm Judge Maltz. This is the first appearance in the state of Florida versus Aiden Fucci, which is case number 21-825 CF Are you Aiden Fucci?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very well. State is here represented by Mr. Lewis. Mr. Fucci is here represented by Ms. Peoples. Good morning, everybody. All right, Mr. Fucci, if you'll raise your right hand for me, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that any testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you can put your hand down. All right, Mr. Fucci, let me tell you what first appearance is. The purpose of a first appearance is to advise you of what the charges are against you, to let you know if there is probable cause to detain you on these charges, to address the issue of your bond if appropriate, and to advise you of some rights that you have. So I am going to start with advising you of some very valuable rights that you have under both the United States and Florida constitutions. First off, you have the right to be represented by an attorney at this and every stage of the proceedings against you. And if you cannot afford to hire one, one will be appointed for you at no cost. I know that the Public Defender's Office is currently appointed to represent you. Judge Anthony had a hearing last week. Keep in mind that everything this morning is being recorded. There's also an assistant state attorney on the line. So if you say anything that's incriminating this morning, it may very well be used against you at a later time. Do you understand these rights as I just explained those to you?
Yes, sir.
All right. So let me tell you what you are charged with. You have been indicted by the St. Johns County Grand Jury on the charge of first-degree premeditated murder. That is a capital felony that is normally punishable by up to death or life imprisonment. In your case, because you are not yet 18 years old, death is not a possible sentence pursuant to the Florida and United States Supreme Courts, but this charge does carry a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. Do you understand the charge against you?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Fucci, do you have any questions about these proceedings today?
No, sir.
All right. The next step in these proceedings will be an arraignment unless your lawyer or lawyers formally waive your arraignment in writing, and that will take place in the next week or two. Anything further from the state?
He went on to say that while the state hopes for a premeditated murder conviction, Fucci will never receive the death penalty for this case. You see, a conviction for first-degree premeditated murder, which is a capital offense punishable by life in prison with no possibility of death or parole in Florida, and you got to think about this. In Florida, death is administered by lethal injection or the electric chair. Here's the twist. Fucci's a juvenile. And in 2005, the U.S. Supreme Court found the death penalty unconstitutional for defendants who are under 18 years of age at the time of their crime. The court, looking at the Eighth Amendment, said it would be cruel and unusual punishment. They even looked toward the 14th Amendment, which guarantees equal protection under the law. So the most that Fucci can receive if convicted is maximum life sentence. But wait, Florida law requires a judge to review the life sentence of a juvenile 25 years after the arrest. The judge can choose at that point to modify a life sentence based on whether the family objects or if the court believes the defendant still poses a risk to society. Bottom line, Fucci is going to be required, if convicted, to serve a minimum of 40 years, making him 54 years old before he could ever be possibly released. Now, based on public records, I see the following evidence as playing a key role in the prosecution's case. I'm going to talk about each form of evidence, and I would reference the videos that I've made previously. If you're unfamiliar, go back and watch the forms of evidence videos. But first, let's talk about the confession. We've learned thus far that the state has a pretty strong case, although it appears that Fucci hasn't provided a confession. This, again, is one of the forms of evidence. Now, the alleged killer has apparently made some statements, and those certainly would be admissible and usable. Second, let's talk about forensic evidence. There appears to be a lot of forensic evidence, such as Fucci's DNA recovered on Tristan's body. There's no indication of assault, but we we have to think about that. It may have been that Fucci cut himself, though, during the frenzy and left other DNA, such as skin tissue, under Tristyn's fingernails. Think about this. She would be fighting for her life and undoubtedly scratching. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't also a lot of forensic evidence in the form of digital photographs on Fucci's mobile phone. In addition, there are at least 2 separate cameras that caught Fucci and Bailey walking toward the area and Fucci leaving. Next, let's talk physical evidence. Public reports and the DA press conference suggest that law enforcement's recovered pieces of physical evidence, such as a knife with a broken tip on the blade from the pond. The knife is believed to be a match, and it matches the description that friends described as a knife belonging to Fucci. Now, it's also believed that there's additional forensic evidence on the knife, and the DA reported that the medical examiner recovered the tip of the knife blade from the victim's scalp during the autopsy. Reports also state police recovered a blood-stained shirt, a pair of shoes. I'm sure there's other evidence in the Fucci home. Let's talk eyewitness testimony. In Florida, premeditation can mean the murder was planned in advance or just thought about before the crime was committed. It requires an intentional and deliberate act to kill someone. Now, do you remember the DA? He said that several of Fucci's friends revealed that the defendant told them he was going to stab someone within the next 30 days. He even said it would happen in the woods. I think the DA's description of the 114 wounds are going to be really incredibly convincing in this argument. He said, quote, premeditation could be inferred certainly from just the sheer number of stab wounds that Tristyn Bailey had to suffer. Every time, this is his quote I'm carrying on here, every time that arm went back and every time that arm went down, that was premeditation, close quote. Now, charging Fucci as an adult is the right thing to do for a number of reasons. First, it means that Fucci, if he's convicted, will have to spend a lot of time in prison before a possible release. If he were tried as an adult, and he now is going to be, he could be sentenced. He couldn't be sentenced past his 19th birthday if he wasn't. That means he would only have served 6 years for the brutal slaying of Tristyn Bailey. That's just frankly unacceptable. Another good reason for charging Fucci as an adult in the court is that it becomes a public record. Juvenile court records are sealed. The most appropriate reason I can think of was best described by Larizzi, who said, the juvenile system is not equipped for cases like this. The maximum time the defendant could spend in juvenile system would be till he's 21. That is not adequate or appropriate for what happened here, close quote. I want to go back to Tristyn's parents for a moment, and something that her father mentioned in his remarks at her memorial service. He spoke of the condolences his family is receiving from people like you around the world. He mentioned those families he's heard from who have experienced the same kind of trauma. He pled with us that we would somehow focus our global efforts on them as well as his family, and I echo those wishes. There are so many children who are murdered, and there's just no public outcry, no public support for their family, and no real kindness extended to them. I hope that we can cumulatively offer them the same love and concern that we do for the outgoing, beautiful, well-to-do families that seem to catch our eye when something bad happens to them. I want to leave you with 5 tips for keeping children safe from predators. Frankly, this should be our number one concern as a parent and as a community. Most assaults on children occur from someone who's associated to them in some way. Rarely is it the stranger lurking in the shadows. But there are cases when a child becomes the victim of an opportunistic crime, such as going to or from school, in the store, or a friend's house. So here are those tips. Number 1, know the route that your child takes to school. Whether they use public transportation, they cycle, walk, whatever. Insist that your child sticks to the same route every day. No shortcuts, no diversions, unless, of course, they speak to you about it in advance. Whenever possible, use the buddy system and always have at least one other person with them. Avoid isolated areas like parks and playgrounds, and stay away from people they don't know. Now, if something does go wrong, it's easier for you to look for your child if you know where to begin their route and how they would get to their destination. If friends try to get you to go someplace, this is speaking to the kids. If your friends try to get you to go someplace secluded or private, suggest another option, and whenever possible, text or call an adult to let them know your destination and who you're with. Number 2, teach your child to never go anywhere with anyone or by themselves without first asking you for permission. Sadly, we must teach our children that bad people will act very nice, maybe even offer gifts, toys, money, or lie to them in order to trick them, saying things like, "Hey, your mom told me to pick you up," or "Can you help me find a lost puppy?" For younger children, make sure they understand what to do if you're late picking them up after school. Number 3, consider code words between you and your children. A code word or a password can be a useful way of stopping someone from tricking your child into getting into their car or taking them somewhere. If you genuinely have to arrange for a family friend to collect your child, you can give them the family password. That way your child will know it's safe to go with them. A family password can also be used at home to ensure your children won't open the door to anyone without talking to a parent first, even if they happen to know who that person is. You might consider a benign phrase your child could say to you that alerts them that they're uncomfortable with their circumstances and that they need you to come and get them. Number 4, teach your child basic response techniques. There's a few basic things children can do if they are traveling to or from school and feel uncomfortable. Like if a car stops and asks them for help or directions, make sure they know don't approach the vehicle. If they're being followed or bothered, if they feel unsafe, teach them to run, scream for help, or go to someone's front door and ask for help. Have them ask the homeowner to call you or the police, but they should not go inside the home. Now, number 5, teach your children what's appropriate and not appropriate in interactions with their peers and with adults. Some of the most important things we can do is to empower our children with the word no. If they're ever uncomfortable or in their personal or online interactions, they should know the word no, regardless of whether it's with other students, teachers, or even other adults. Children need to understand how to recognize, react, and report anything that makes them feel uncomfortable or unsafe. Now, as our children mature, they're given more autonomy, and with that comes an increased risk of being victimized. Establish clear rules and consequences for not sticking to the rules, combined with some of the foundational lessons above, and I believe that will help reduce the chances of becoming victims. Well, I hope you never have to face the painful reality that the Bailey family is going through right now, and that you teach yourself and your loved ones how to evaluate their own level of risk so that the decisions they make can improve their safety, not cause it to be more detrimental. I look forward to your thoughts below. Make sure you're putting them down about whether you think Aiden Fucci should be tried as an adult in this case. Please take a moment, hit the like and the subscribe button, and ring the bell. But most of all, thanks for supporting Profiling Evil. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.